Hello Internet, AdoptedMike here, and in this video I want to cover the topic Kabini for gaming, and does it work and is it worth it? So AMD's Kabini is a very interesting chipset and processor. So we got this ultra low power, sometimes as low as 9 watt TDP, and then up to 25 watt TDP CPU, but you can also get a quad core at 2.05 gigahertz in that same package. So my question is what would this translate to in like a gaming scenario? Well, let's take a look. First of all, we're going to start with this MSI motherboard here. This is the MSI AM1 I, and the I would be ITX, and we're going to be using the 5350 Athlon from AMD. As you can see here, I've got the motherboard out and the CPU installed. It's kind of a cute little setup there. The CPU is actually quite tiny, and we've got 8 gigabytes of RAM, so I wanted to load the board up with RAM to make sure that RAM wasn't the bottleneck. And one thing to think about here too, as we take a look down, here's the PCI Express slot here, and the actually the Athlon will only communicate at by 4 with the PCI Express slot. So even though this is a physical by 16, it's only going to be electrically a by 4. And that is likely to make the biggest difference in gaming performance. Can that CPU feed the GPU enough over the limited power it has anyway, plus it's only being able to talk at a by 4. So anyway, let's move on and I'll show you my test bench and my setup. So rounding out the test bench, we're going to be using an SSD to eliminate any storage bottlenecks, and I also have a 620 watt power supply, so I'll be able to supply just about any graphics card that I can put on this test bench. So using this GPU hierarchy chart that I get from Tom's Hardware, and I'll put a link in the description below, I've picked out 5 different levels of GPUs to do the testing. And I'm going to be testing these 5 different GPUs on both the Kabini and also the Vishera. So I've got my secondary test bench set up right now with a AMD 990FX chipset motherboard with a 8320. So I've got 8 cores running at 4 gigahertz, and that will give me a pretty good idea of no bottlenecks there, and we'll see what kind of bottlenecks we actually end up with on this Kabini, if any at all. So now for the GPUs I'm going to be testing. I'll start off at the low end with the GTX 460, and then we're going to move up to a GTX 580. Then we're going to move up to a GTX 660, which some people consider it to be equivalent to the 580, but I wanted to try that out anyway. Then we're going to move up to a GTX 760. And then finally, I'm moving up to overkill, well, way overkill, especially in this situation, the GTX 980, just to simulate what it would be like for a top-end graphics card. So we'll start off with the Valley benchmark at 1080p. And you can see here there's really not much of improvement as you go up the line with the Kabini, whereas the Vishera starts to really ramp up. And by the time you get to the 980, it is just a complete and utter disaster. So that just shows that the scores are not working that well for the Kabini in the Valley benchmark. Now we'll continue on. So here we are in Tomb Raider 2013, and this is the average SPS. You can see here it actually doesn't fare too horrible, holding its own up to the GTX 760, and then at the 980 it just can't keep up anymore. But for this particular game, not bad at all. I'm kind of surprised. Now for Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, we don't see too bad. I mean, you can see it definitely doesn't make sense to go much higher than a GTX 660 with the Kabini, but as after that, it just completely stays about the same on the Kabini side, and then just continues to ramp up for the Vishera. So definitely not friendly with that game. So as we can see here in Metro Last Light, you know, not that great yet again. The 660 isn't much of an improvement over the 460 for the Kabini, but it's a huge improvement on the Vishera, so it's definitely not looking very well for Metro Last Light, but that's a very, very demanding game at any rate. But holy cow, it just kind of stays flat across the entire board. And last but not least, we've got the BioShock Infinite benchmark. And you can see here the Vishera starts to walk away from the Kabini yet again, unfortunately. So definitely not friendly to this one either. So really, what's left to say? Well, I mean, there's a couple things to consider here. First of all, Kabini never was going to be a good platform for gaming anyway, not with that ultra low power stance that it's taking. But, you know, anything at that GTX 460 range, and I'll pop up the hierarchy chart again, or lower than that, might not be that bad of a deal with Kabini. So if you were, you know, just going to use it for some very low-end games or something, yeah, it probably could work. It certainly is an extremely cheap platform. Maybe you're looking for just, you know, a regular home computer, and every once in a while you might do some gaming on it, then perhaps it may work out for you there too. But boy, for the high-end 3D type games, it is just not made for that. But like I said before in the beginning, you're also looking at a 25-watt TDP processor, and you know, you're comparing it to an 8-core Vishera. I mean, obviously there was going to be some difference, but I think it was a little more dramatic than even I expected. But yeah, so Kabini for gaming, I would say no, unless you're doing some 2D type gaming or some very lower resolution, and even then, don't get anything above that GTX 460 line. Go lower than that for sure, and then at least you'll have your bang for your buck. If you gotta have a top-end GPU, you better look for something else. So anyway, if you like this video, go ahead and give me the thumbs up and tell me what you think in the comments below. Did I miss anything? Want to see me do something different? Unfortunately, I didn't have any other lower-end GPUs on hand, because that would have been a good start. But yeah, leave me a comment below. And as always, thank you for watching.